Hello, everyone. I'm Miranda Sawyer. Welcome, welcome, welcome to The Making of the Virtues, part of the BAFTA television, the sessions supported by TCL. So thank you to TCL for your support. This virtual series celebrates some of the nominees and nominated programmes from this year's Virgin Media British Academy Television Awards and the British Academy Television Craft Awards. So before we start, I've got a little bit of housekeeping. This is what it is. So these events are part of BAFTA's learning work to share expertise from TV, film and games with audiences far and wide. That's you, audiences out there. Check out BAFTA.org and BAFTA's social channels for more activity. And you can join the conversation on social if you want to use a hashtag, use BAFTA TV sessions. We're streaming on Zoom and BAFTA's YouTube channel. And you can also rewatch this afterwards on the YouTube channel and other sessions. If you've got a question, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and closed captioning is available now, which you can turn on at the bottom of your screen. Okay, that is the housekeeping. So I am now going to introduce our panelists one by one in a kind of glamorous manner. Okay, numero uno, we have Mark Herbert, producer of The Virtues. Ta-da! Hello, Mark. Switch your video on. Hello, Mark. We have Nickie Sault, also producer of The Virtues. Hi, Nickie.
Hi, everyone. Hi.
We have Helen Behan, actor or actress in The Virtues. There you come. There she is. It's amazing, this, isn't it? It's like we're popping up from behind a curtain. And we have Jack Thorne, writer of The Virtues. We have Stephen Graham, actor in The Virtues.
Yeah.
There you go. And we have Shane Meadows, director and writer of The Virtues. There we all are. Woo! We'll just pause a moment for everyone to check our lovely sitting rooms and book corners, you know how it is. Have a quick look. So congratulations, everybody, on all these fantastic nominations for a wonderful mini-series. I'm just going to quickly run through what you're actually nominated for. Director fiction, which is Shane. The Virtues itself is nominated for the mini-series. Shane and Jack are nominated for writer of drama. Stevie is nominated for actor. Helen is nominated for supporting actress. That is pretty good. And I'll give you a kind of round of applause. There's only me here, but that is your round of applause. Okay, so I'm going to start with you, Shane. And what I want to know, I suppose, really, is how you came to The Virtues as we see it as an audience, because I know it was a long journey that maybe was going to wiggle off somewhere else. But if you could just start with your germ of an idea and how you ended up with the 4 episodes that we saw.
Yeah, I'll try.
I mean, I know it's a hard one,
yeah,
but you know, we have time.
Probably toy. So I mean, the basic premise was that I had the original germ of the idea back, just trying to work the dates out now, but so it probably about 2.5 years ago, and I got Jack to come up and see me, and we just basically met and sat down, and I said that I'd got the idea for the basic premise for The Virtues, but because I needed Jack's feedback, really, because the idea was sometimes things are so personal, and I mean, most of my stuff has an autobiographical element to it, but this was beyond that for me personally. And so I really, you know, Jack was, to be honest, my first port of call as a human being and a writer, to see whether he thought that that I was right to try and make something with the idea. That was really the initial thing. Jack coming up and stopping up here for a couple of days, and us starting to flesh out a very rough idea based around the Joseph character. I think at that stage, I can't remember whether it was even called The Virtues at that stage. I don't think we would have known how many episodes, whether it was a film, whether it was a series, but the germ of an idea of somebody who finds something out very late in their life that they'd forgotten had happened to them. And obviously, you know, people will have seen the show now, which is an incident of sexual abuse. And so, you know, I had the basic framework, but like all of my anything that I've made. The writing, the improvisation, then even on set, in the edit, even in the grade, we were still editing, and it's always this kind of refining process. But yeah, the very germ of it was me meeting Jack and him helping me to believe that it was an idea worth telling, I suppose. And then I would say probably 2.5 years later, we're sat here now, yeah, I'm glad that he said he thought it was.
Well, we're all glad. So there's 2 questions I think that come out of that. And the first one is to Jack. I think that a lot of people perhaps misunderstand some of the writing in Shane's work, because there's a sense that the actors are improvising, so there is no writing, and this is not true. I'd like you to maybe just expand on that, because there is room, isn't there, within the setup for actors to improvise, but essentially it is a written project.
Yeah, I mean, the way that Shane and I work is we try and write 4 perfect scripts, and we work really hard on them, and we try, and we just kind of chisel away and try and make statues that look nice. But then the way that his process works is that he then trusts the people he works with to bring something else to it. So that these scenes and things exist in one form, and then the actors take them and they go somewhere else with it, and they riff off it, and then we respond to it. Actually with the Virtues, that there was a point when our Ep4, as we'd written it, didn't work at all anymore because of where the journey had gone. So it was like Shane took a break, and then we worked on another script to be Ep4. Do you know what I mean? So it's a constant evolving process, and it's based on trust, and it's based on Shane's amazing gut, and do you know what I mean? And this sort of ability to know when something feels truthful or not, and which is just nuts. And when you see it in process, when you see the things that happen all the time through this, you realize quite what a genius he is.
There you go, Shane. At what stage, when you're writing or doing a project like this, do you bring in the actors? Do you write for particular actors, or was that the case in the Virtues, or how did that work, Shane?
Yeah, I suppose I tend to sort of write, if I know an actor, sometimes you're hunting for somebody. I suppose when we did something like This Is England, you didn't, maybe bar Vicky McClure and Andrew Shim, who I kind of knew. You were looking for a whole new fleet of actors. And I would say that the process was slightly different. But when we were doing the series, when you can see a character like Woody or Gadget or Harvey in your head, and you've already made something with them, there's this beautiful thing where they almost help you to write their lines because you know who they are. So you kind of sit there reading a magazine, and the keyboard taps itself. And so what was really wonderful about this, and like Jack says in particular with episode 4, was that when you know an actor's gift, and you can feel how an actor speaks and how an actor responds, and how 2 people kind of work together in a room, you bring them into that writing process. So if you've got someone in your mind's eye, they help you. They do in my head anyway. I don't know whether they do in Jack's, but in my head, I love hearing, I love knowing who somebody is, because they help me to inform the script, and the actors also play an enormous part in inspiring. It's like a duality, a dual relationship of, we'll come up with a script, and then we'll sit down and workshop with actors, and things that did or didn't work, either stay or get changed. And it comes from the actors being honest and open in those improvisation sessions. And so it's a 2-handed process that works all the way through. And what's lovely is that no one's too possessive over their own part. It's, from me and Jack, sometimes an idea may remain quite true all the way through, and sometimes things completely change. But it's not that they're not written, they're just written in a slightly different environment.
And this one changed quite a lot until you were ready to bring in the actors. I'm going to bring in the actors now. Hello, Stephen. Hello, Helen. When you were brought into the project, obviously there are improvisations that are required. You need to understand the characters. Can you cast your mind back to when you first came in to the project and what you did and where you thought you were going to end up going? I'm going to start with you, Stephen.
It was a strange one for me personally, because it kind of already had a life of its own, and then that life that it had, it kind of changed, and it was basically, I can't remember, but I think it was either Mark or it was Shane, and it was a conversation. It was like, say it was a Friday or something like that. Friday night, about 5 or 6 o'clock. You busy at the minute? And I was like, well, not really. No, I don't think I'm sort of. Why? Like, can you get to Sheffield? And I was like, yeah, of course. And it's that, and you know, I'm not calling myself Batman, but it's kind of like, if Shane phones, you go. You know what I mean? It's that kind of thing. So it was like, I think it might have even been the next day, if I'm honest. You know what I mean? I think it was in Mark on the phone. I went, yeah, okay, I'll get there. And I got there, and it was like, right, we just want to explain this thing to you. And they did. And I was like, I'm kind of in a whirlwind, if I'm honest. And I was like, okay. And he was like, right, so have a little look at this. This is what me and Jack have done a little bit of. And I was like, okay. And then he was like, right, okay. So, and we talked. And then he went, right. And by the way, do you fancy doing a little improvisation? I was like, yeah, okay. And then we did. And then it was like 6 o'clock. And then he was like, right, that went really well. Do you think you could maybe make it happen next week? And so it was, for me, it was just a whirlwind, and all of a sudden I was on this journey with it. Do you know what I mean? And that was how it came about for me personally. But to go back to the process of what it's like as an actor to work with Jack and Shane's writing, it's the most liberating, frightening, exciting, beautiful experience I have ever had the pleasure to have. Do you know what I mean? Because, and you're right, it is all written. It's written beautifully, and there's beautiful scenes, and there's beautiful stuff within these pages, which you absorb. And as an actor, your job is to learn these lines. But you know that with Shane, it doesn't necessarily have to go that way. But what happens is you read them, and subconsciously these words that these people speak go into your head. So it's like what Shane said beautifully. You know what I mean? It's that dual process. I'm doing a lot of work of creating a character along with Shane, whereas Jack and Shane have done a lot of work creating the language of this character, which then feeds in, and then there's a beautiful little marriage that happens. You can be in an improvisation and you can be saying something, and then you'll go back and you'll have a look at your script. And all of a sudden you realize that you've said half of that paragraph that was in that script. You know what I mean? So it's gone in some kind of transcendental meditation way. Yeah.
That's what we're all looking for.
Sorry, without sounding pretentious. That's kind of how it works, man. It's that you can't put your finger on it. It's just something amazing. It really is. It's beautiful.
And what about you, Helen? So your character is, you come in, we have the kind of Joseph character with the first part all in Liverpool, and then we come in, we still don't know what's going on, and then really you're the reveal. You're the like, it's your character comes in. Ta-da! Not organs blazing, but you are like a huge clue, aren't you? And you have this amazing scene with Stephen right in the kind of act 2 of the very first episode. I mean, you have to, that is a big scene.
Yeah. It's huge. And I mean, I'm off the back of everything that everybody has said so far. For me, starting off on this job, I think we were at the RTS. I was there with Jack and Shane some number of years ago, and said, I've something just mentioned it that night. Now we're going back 5 or 6 years, maybe. I can't remember. And I kept it in the back of my mind, but like everything with Shane, I'd wait to hear more. And so I always knew there was a possibility that he was writing something with me in mind, which is such an honor as an actor. And when The Virtues came about, he rang me and said, we're going to get the ball rolling on this thing. So there's no thing
So I'm sorry, my internet is going in and out. So if I look like I'm being vacant, I'm not being vacant, just so you know. I'm now going to bring in Mark and Nickie because your process, Shane's process, is a long process. I'm always interested in how that is for producers, because he might come to you and go, I've got this idea, and you're like, great, and then it doesn't really for like 2 years. How do you keep it bubbling? How do you know when to kind of go, okay, we're definitely going for this. This is happening.
I think on this, because we worked with Channel 4 on the This Is England series, and they got so much trust in the process. I mean, I think they came to set probably 3 times over the course of This Is England, which is unlike most execs. And you just kind of have to, you learn from every job, you learn something to take on to the next job. So on This Is It, and I think like what Jack was saying, I think that Shane on Virtues, it's a bit like a footballer in their prime, that multi-camera shooting on This Is England, that was amazing, that we just kind of knew exactly how to set this one up. So it meant that then we could absorb delays and punches. We had this amazing, it was the most cheap Skywalker ranch ever. It was a school in Sheffield that had been shut down for 2 years, just around the corner from the office, and it was £400 a month for rent. That was everything in. And so we just got this school where we had the art department, we had the Shane's office, we had a little section for rehearsals and workshops, we had the edit. And because you've got such low, you're a cheap thing to feed, it means then that you can allow Shane's process to evolve. So if you suddenly go, when you're doing a normal shoot, the money's just trickling away every hour of a shoot. Whereas with this, we just set it up in a way, because of what we've learned over the last few years, to not do that. So we were able to absorb a 6-week hiatus or a 2-week hiatus, or not film on a Friday to look at the edit. We had this little, like I say, it was just this mad little studio, which was an old school with only cold water, there was no cafe, or, it was about 4 miles from the nearest
Make
start.
them suffer.
But it worked. It kind of, we had it for a year, and that was sort of part of it. And we just had me and Nickie just with Shane just assembled the best crew ever, and then you just have the best sort of departments. And that really, again, who have worked with Shane in the past, so know how that process works and will embrace the process and love the process rather than reject it because it's not normal.
And
that's what you think, Nickie?
Well, we actually reduced it down as well, didn't we? Because on This Is England, by the time we got to This Is England 90, we were huge, because you're shooting 3 cameras as a standard, and normally it's 1 or 2. So we were shooting 3 cameras as a standard. So that comes with a lot of crew. Just 3 cameras alone comes with a lot of crew. And when you're shooting a period drama, which This Is England's were a period drama, Shane couldn't go, I want to go over there, or I want to, let's scrap this and let's go into that house. And so what Shane was feeling like by the end of 90 was he was the head of this really long train of people following him around. So on the Virtues, we made a conscious decision to strip everyone back. So we were actually shooting 5 cameras as standard on the Virtues. But what we did was we were shooting with cameras where the operators were pulling their own focus. We didn't do lighting, we did available lights, so we didn't have a lighting crew, we didn't have lighting trucks. So we just made a conscious decision to have a very small, very mobile crew. So Shane had that freedom. If the story's going in one direction, we're all going in that direction, and it's happening really fast.
Yeah, and Shane, I mean, one of the things that gives you then is an intimacy, isn't it? You have an intimacy between the actors. There's a lot of two-handers in this show. There are a lot of revelations between 2 people, and presumably, if you have a smaller crew, that's helping with that intimacy. I'm actually thinking again of the scene with Stephen and Helen in Ireland.
Yeah, what happened was there was a big turning point in This Is England 90, where we were doing the reveal scene where Lol sits everyone down at the dinner table and basically tells them that she was the one that killed her dad and it wasn't Combo. And what I'd learned over the years working with that cast in particular is that very few takes ever resemble other takes. And so if you only had sort of 2 cameras or 3 cameras on 6 people, or, you know, I think it was maybe 5 or 6 people in that scene, and then you went to do close-ups and mediums, you know, there's this whole process of filmmaking that I didn't really realise until I did that scene on This Is England 90, where we literally borrowed, stole and begged a few cameras around that day. And we decided this may only happen once, you know. It's one of those scenes where you sometimes get these guttural responses from people and from actors, and sometimes it's a wonderful bargaining chip for somebody. If that actor knows you're asking them to go somewhere incredibly real and incredibly deep, it's not just going back 5% and delivering, you know, a sort of half-arsed performance. You're asking them to really go somewhere. There can be a certain amount of reticence because they might have to do it 15 times, and no human being on earth can go into that place 15 times in a row. And 3 of them, you know, someone flushes a toilet or a plane goes over. And so we decided this needs to be shot like a piece of theatre, because if it does happen in one take, and we've got all of these cameras all higgledy-piggledy set up over the place, and that was this kind of mad experiment that really what you see in the finished thing on This Is England 90 was the thing that gave me the belief that we could shoot the entire series like that on this, because and I think it transformed what this was, because I think had this been these kind of scenes, and even though it's really subtle, the difference of a scene being made up of 4 or 5 takes all the time, which is fairly standard, you've got people who are looking at people in a scene, making eye contact, and it's not the actual moment of eye contact from that moment in time. And it can be done really well, and it can be hidden really well. But there's something that I saw in that scene in This Is England 90 that made me go, that's the extra 5%. That's this little magical ingredient. But it's like, how do you manage to get 2 people sat in a kid's bedroom and 7 cameras on them? Because obviously it's quite a technical achievement. But that really inspired the whole of the Virtues, and that the Virtues all needed to be shot so that the actors knew that if we laid something down in one take, we'd got a wide, 2 mids and 2 close-ups as a bare minimum, and that we could go, that scene's done. So it might take a bit longer to set things up and to set the cameras up, but everybody knew when we shouted action, if something magic happened, or you had to go somewhere that you were scared to go, you weren't going to have to do it 58 times afterwards. So, you know, it was a kind of a massive step forward for me in some ways.
And so some of these, I mean, a lot of, there's obviously great humour in the Virtues, but there's a lot of very intense scenes, obviously. And I just want to ask you, Stephen, and you, Helen, when you're doing a scene like that, presumably, if Shane has said to you, okay, you can just go for it, and we will have whatever you do, you won't have to do it 58 times. That gives you a kind of freedom to be in that moment.
Yeah. Will I go?
Yeah.
I think, sorry about that glitch earlier. I'm in a technical crevasse here. So for us, I remember, Stephen, I don't know if you remember when we rehearsed that scene, and what you were saying earlier on about having a script and a structure in place. I remember reading that scene from Shane and Jack. It was this, you know, I could say 12 pages, I might be wrong. It was a monstrous history on the page between these 2 characters. And I remember when we sat to rehearse, and as I've said many a time before, Shane's rehearsal room is like group therapy, which is a good thing and a bad thing. But in those rehearsal spaces, you really get to the depth of the character, because we spent, I don't know how long, 3 hours more talking, and you inevitably talk about your own history and your own, you know, your own stuff that you have internally, and that comes out and it informs the character. And we got to somewhere very very vulnerable in a moment in that rehearsal space, and I remember we were all kind of emotional. It was, I'll never forget it, in fact. And Shane is brilliant, and I don't say that lightly, and people say it about him a lot, but he knows how to keep that in you as an actor. And I remember he actually said to us, stop, where you're going with that. I know what's coming. I can feel it. We were all kind of emotionally getting to a place with these characters that he stopped us and he said, keep that now and store it and wait. So when you read that off the page, and I mean, Jack, the two of them, such talented writing, it's very daunting, because you think, how am I going to do this justice? And the joy of working in the improvisational way means you know that you say those words and sometimes maybe it's me, maybe it's whatever, it doesn't always come out in a believable way. And so the joy of Shane is he'll say, right, that sounds a bit hammy coming out of your mouth, so try it a different way, or say it, put your own slant on it. So maybe there's just a word changed, or a sentiment, or a pause, or something that's yours that lends gravity to that moment. So thinking about that 12 scene page and all that history was very daunting as an actor. But knowing, and I'm sure you'd say the same, Stephen, we're absolutely in safe hands with Shane, because it was always up for discussion how it would play out. And on the day, I remember we all had some stuff going on. I mean, it was a cataclysm of events that happened, and it nearly kind of didn't transpire on the day, but something happened that we decided to go with it and take all the stuff that was happening. And everybody from Nickie and Mark, from the makeup and the costume, the crew, everyone was aware that there was this giant moment, and that puts a lot of pressure on. But on the back of that, you have Shane saying, don't worry if it doesn't happen this time, we'll go again. So you already feel relaxed enough to know, okay, if I balls this up, we'll be able to go again. But you're so relaxed then in that state. You want to do so well, because the subject matter is so intense. It's so relatable on many levels, through loss and pain and loneliness and guilt and all these human sentiments that everybody can relate. You want to do it justice. And so everybody was quiet and peaceful. Stephen was so good to me that morning and was letting me prepare. And you don't always get that as an actor, that time to go to that place mentally. And we knew that there was lots of cameras. There was probably no need to keep going and going and going. And so when the cameras rolled, and Stephen said it to me since, something kind of, without sounding flighty, something kind of transcendental happened, and the two of us got completely lost. Same
thing. It's a transcendental
characters. Yeah. Well, it's. I mean, it sounds how it sounds, but it actually, that was how it was. We got completely enveloped in those characters, in that story, and at that moment.
Stevie, I want to bring you in, because when I've spoken to you before, one of the things that you've said about the way that Shane works is actually. It reminds you of how Scorsese works. And I wondered if you wanted to perhaps expand on that as well, because how would you say that they're related, other than their extreme talent and immense way with a hat?
Yeah, baby.
For me personally, it's the kind of attention to detail and the conversations that you have about the character. Do you know what I mean? And then what they both do is they create this playground. They create this place where you feel 1,000,000% confident. It's like, I suppose, like playing for Jurgen Klopp. Do you know what I mean? He's so gregarious. He's so enthusiastic. His passion, and I'm speaking about the three of them in their own respect. I'm sorry if I offend anyone, but it's just my 14 hours. It's that, and it makes you want to. They fill you with confidence beyond your wildest dreams. Personally, for me, do you know what I mean? And that's why the two of them they're so knowledgeable about film and everything. Do you know what I mean? And about the story that we're telling. They're immersed within the story that we're telling, and they know it inside out and back to front. And that's where the similarities are so great from the two of them. And they just fill you with this confidence and this belief that no matter what you do, it won't be wrong. There may be another way of doing it, but it won't be wrong. So when someone's saying to you, it's all right, you know, as human beings anyway, you know, naturally we're self-conscious and we can get quite nervous and you know, all of those little things. But if someone's going to you, it's all right, don't worry about it. It's kind of really puts you at ease, do you know what I mean? And then you're allowed to play. And just to go back to that scene in particular, and it, you know, that was an entire take from start to finish. And I know it makes, I don't know how it may sound or whatever, and I don't, you know, I'm not one of them kind of people, but for me personally, that was the most purest moment on a film set and as an actor I've ever experienced in my life. And that was simply because time stood still. There was something that happened. There was an energy and a presence within that room due to the fact of what had happened to people individually. Do you know what I mean? What people were going through. And we came together as a collective family there. Do you know what I mean? As a real, so people were having issues with families or issues with friends or whatever that were really, really, really deep and really affecting them personally. But we kind of put all that aside and we all just kind of got our arms around each other and we went, it's all right, let's just give this a shot and see what happens. And it was the most beautiful moment I have personally ever. Look, I mean, you know, I'm not fucking something happened.
We can see him.
Something happened in that room. We captured something, and that was down to the universe, really. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not one of them. Oh, sorry. I'm not. I don't mean to talk like that. But there was something magical. You know, I believe in that kind of stuff, and something spiritual and magical happened in that room. And that's down to the process of how he works. You know what I mean? You experience those moments that are spiritual, really spiritual and moving. Yeah,
and that transferred. Obviously, it completely transfers through the screen as well. I wanted to talk to you, actually, Shane, and all of you really about the end of the Virtues, because I know that it changed, didn't it? That it was filmed and then it was altered. Do you want to explain about that, to talk about it? Because obviously, sorry, I'm just going to waffle a bit longer, but obviously episode 4, there's a kind of mirroring going on all the way through between Dinah and Joseph. They're coming together, they're moving apart. It's a parallel revelation, isn't it? It's a parallel ending. They're moving towards something, and there was a different ending, wasn't there, for Nee's character?
There was a sort of dual ending for each character, and probably 3 versions of each from Stephen's perspective and from, you know, Joseph, the character of Joseph. I mean, Mark and Nickie are maybe best equipped to have the memory of exactly the, you know, because for me personally, the Dina character I was obviously invested in as a filmmaker and director, whereas Joseph, I was invested in his story in a different way, because how he kind of handled the situation with that man, I was contemplating it from my own perspective. It was like a safe arena for me to do something that I didn't dare do in real life because I thought it could go very wrong, and so it kind of had to be left open because I personally, outside of being a writer and outside of a director involved in this, you know, writing with Jack, I kind of, I was quite scared of that thing, because I didn't, I suppose you don't know, you have no idea how it's going to be until you get there. And it's not the same, and it's not remotely the same as actually facing the real person. But in some ways, I think that for me, the Dina and the mum, I didn't know quite which way it would maybe go. From a director's point of view, you know, do we need this or this to balance this and this? You know, I didn't, you know, so let's shoot both. Whereas with Joseph, for the first time in my life, it had a completely different meaning, a very personal meaning. And there was, because I experienced something similar to what his character had experienced, there was a part of me that wanted to go in and wanted Joseph to go in on my behalf and give him a right walloping. And
kill him.
And there was a part of me that wanted him to go in and forgive him, and, you know, and then, but what was lovely was that we didn't choose almost who Joseph was. That bit wasn't kind of written. It was Stephen and him, how when the him being ill in bed wasn't decided till possibly on that day. In the script, Joseph walks in and has a hatchet, a small axe in his coat, still got the label on from B&Q.
Yeah.
You know, none of these things transpired because on the day, like normal, it's always a bit, we're going to go this way, but there was just that little bit more from my point of view. And me and Stephen in particular had a lot of really intense conversation as friends as well as colleagues on that one. But Mark and Nickie might remember the other 800 variations, as will Jack. I can't remember. I can't go far enough back.
But just to go into that scene between Stephen and Liam, I mean, we had a stunt coordinator standing by. We really weren't sure in what direction this scene was going to go in. So it was so incredibly powerful, and I can't imagine any other set on the planet running this way, because I mean, me and Shane were sitting in the next room with two tiny little monitors with headphones on, and at one point I actually cried out. Don't know if you remember this, Shane. I actually went, ah, at the monitor, and Shane took his headphones off and he went, what? And I went, nothing. And for that moment, because I hadn't, this didn't exist, this scene, until these two people came together, and just the power and the courage of these two actors in this situation. I was at home on my sofa watching it on telly. I was so in that moment with them. Yeah, it was absolutely incredible, just incredible. But we shot, I think we shot the murder first. We shot Dina killing her mum first, and then we kind of came away and we looked at it, and then it was a case of, yeah, this might not sit right, this might not feel right. So we went back in and we shot her not killing her mother. And then we had a different ending for Mark O'Halloran, for Craigie. And then I think you decided on the day, Shane, you wanted to hang Craigie. I think on the day you decided you wanted to hang.
Let's hang Craigie.
That's a bit me.
Going down, like, baby.
It was like, no, that's a great idea. But yeah, so and then the first time that me and Mark actually saw Shane, he cut that final sequence together. It's again one of the most powerful experiences I've ever had, watching that sequence and seeing the endings that he had chosen. It was exactly what it needed to be, exactly what it should have been. It was just perfect.
Can I just really briefly say, and I'm obviously let other people talk, but I keep forgetting to mention the crew in this regard, because when normally a crew, like anybody who's working on a job, if they're kept outside a house and it's raining or it's snowing or it's freezing or it's red hot, and you're kept outside a house for 3 hours, 4 hours, sometimes a day, while three people inside with feather boas on are going, oh, you know, maybe we should try this. And, you know, it's like, it takes an enormous amount of faith for people to kind of, to sit and wait for you to kind of, to find something, and an enormous amount of belief. And then to pussyfoot it. Sometimes I'll keep the actors might stay in the room because you don't want to lose a moment, and the crew will walk in really, really meekly and set up the cameras around the actors and wouldn't speak. And it's like, you know, I've never worked with a bad crew, but I've worked with crews that obviously got frustrated at how I wanted to work. Whereas the crew on this, I honestly don't think we could have got those intimate performances without the way that they were. It was unbelievable.
I think everybody knows from the start. I was just going to say the same, the crew were incredible. And I think because we've got people who have worked with Shane in the past, you know, we've even had some people that worked on Dead Man's Shoes, you know that things will change, and you know that you have to be on your toes, and you know that you may go to shoot the end of Dead Man's Shoes and Shane goes, this isn't right. And you know when Shane says that it's real, and you know that he's just searching for a truth and an honesty. So even though it's the most complicated thing to rearrange what will be right, everyone goes along because they know that the result will be great. So you have this crew that believe, and it might be that their morning is hellish because they've got to sort out a new location, or they've got to change this, or they've prepped a stunt and we're not using a stunt, or they've prepped a prop and we're not using it, but they all embrace it. And if it wasn't for them and their openness to work in that process, we'd be screwed. I mean, they were, you know, they're incredible. And like Shane says, they just go you know what, we're going to have to move. This isn't working. What we said we were going to do, we're now going to change it completely. Everyone go home and we'll come back tomorrow and see if something else magic happens. And they go, yeah, okay, great. There's no grumbling. And I think that was just testing.
How do you manage that? That is amazing. All crews grumble. This is outrageous.
We choose very carefully. We do. And that's why Shane's really loyal. That's why Shane likes to return to the same people, because when you sign on, you sign on for Shane. You sign on for that process. So every single person that's signing on to one of his projects knows they're never going to have an experience like it again unless they sign on to his next one.
And,
there you go. I want to also ask about there's other scenes as well which are very different to that, and the obvious one to think about, there's two aspects of it I'd like to pull out, but the one that I watched The Virtues again, and I had to walk out of the room in this scene, and it is the pub scene. In the first episode, like the tension is just mad. Like it's completely mad, and it's just a pub scene. Like it's just a normal pub scene, and yet the tension was absolutely killing me. And so every time I've watched it, and I've watched it a few times, I've walked out of the room, come back, paused, walked out of the room, come back, paused, and that I know was filmed a little because of the process. Was filmed later than was meant to happen, is that right? And so quite a lot of people were slightly more drunk than were expected to be. Who wants to talk me through that process?
That's maybe
Shane,
a producer.
That's you, Shane.
I think it's a producer thing, maybe.
No, I'm going to say, Shane,
okay,
talk me through that.
So what happened was we'd had a number of issues. Like we were doing, so we had about 3 false starts. Stephen came on and we were shooting like a week later, and then when we started shooting and we did these beautiful scenes, because we did it all chronologically, and which is also not easy to do because for many reasons. But I think we'd lost one of our main cameramen. We'd lost off the job. We had loads of footage that went corrupted on these cards. We had to keep going back to the house, and this, every time I kept shooting these things with Stephen's kid and his ex, and his ex's new partner. You kept going, thank God, because normally you go back and you can't recapture something. And on this particular day, with the pub, I think Mark will obviously fill in the details about. I think he put a bit of money on to make sure that they'd all got a bit of food, bit of drink, and what have you. And we were meant to get there at 6. And everyone that was in that pub were locals to that pub, rather than pulling in a load of people who were with you on set all day moaning about the food. They were all in there all day. And anyway, they were going to be there when we got there. And so there were these 2 things that happened. One was we'd lost our main cameraman, and we had this amazing guy Nick who come on to DOP the rest of the show, was with us. And we said it was one of these moments where a lot of times, Miranda, we'll walk away and come back tomorrow. But it was like they'd already blown all the budget down there, and they wanted more budget for more weird blue drinks. And so we said, let's just take Nick down. We've got this beautiful there was this little Sony camera that you could almost buy one in Curry's, but they're amazing in low light. It's very cinematic. You wouldn't shoot everything on it, but we sort of said, Nick, would you like to do an audition to be the head cameraman now that we've just lost this guy, through very unfortunate circumstances? Let's just treat it like an audition, because it's
this is Nick Gillespie who ended it. Yeah,
and let's just do it on one camera. Stephen, I didn't know how Stephen. We'd had this conversation about because drunk acting is one of those things that very, very few people can do. And I'd never seen, Stephen was almost kind of going, can I just try it on the day? So I didn't know whether I was going to get Harold Lloyd or Dudley Maureen Arthur. And so I was just thinking, we've got to go and at least try, because it's going to go wrong. It's like we've got one little camera, a guy training, almost like an audition to step up from being one of the camera operators to doing the whole thing. And we went down, and they were a little over inebriated, and they weren't so drunk that they didn't recognize Stephen, and it honestly happened. There was, I say one take, there was a moment's pause because of these cameras being more like a consumer model. We had to pause for a few minutes to swap a card in this camera, but everything that you saw in that pub, kind of happen in one take. So people were getting into that mode and into that spirit, but it all started. And I think from my point of view, I have to have my hats off to Stephen, because I wasn't directing him. I wasn't going really gradually change your personality, really gradually go from this meek, wounded man that hasn't drunk for years. I didn't tell him to do that. He did that, and him and Nick found their way around that scene. And I had a little monitor that was being beamed to, and I was like the cat that got the cream. I was just like, this is unbelievable. And there was a girl in there that genuinely fancied Stephen and didn't know he was an actor. And there was all kinds of boundaries and lines and blurred bits going on. But it was, I think that was as close to a documentary for 90% of the people in the room as it gets, I think.
There was one guy who just got out of prison that day as one of the extras, and because we said we want people who are local. So he was celebrating being free after 7 years. And and we were trying to stop them because we were like 3 hours late turning up to this pub. And you'd sort of saying, keep them sober, keep them sober, keep them sober. But how can, they're all in this pub, and we got there and they weren't as sober as we hoped. But in a weird way, and I think that's what I remember Nick's first bit of being a DOP is just sitting. It was not a very big pub either. I mean, we had Tom Davis, who played the barman for one day. I mean, it was like, let's just give it a go. Again, pressure's off. We've got an hour before we have to wrap. Let's just see if we can do it. And if not, we'll come back tomorrow. And in a weird way, that just liberates everybody. And Nick, and he was just incredible. He just instinctively, like Shane said, a documentary filmmaker, just followed what Stephen did. And I was sat, I remember, I think me and Shane were sat under this dartboard trying to hide so we weren't going to be in shot, and just hiding and looking and going, oh my God, it's just like watching the best documentary ever, and just sitting there thinking, one, Nick's going to be amazing DOP, and two, we've got a great scene, and three, thinking, oh my God, are we going to get out of here alive?
There was always that element, right?
Yeah,
given that you just said that you shot it all chronologically, and Stephen, I'm going to go back to you in a little bit about how much walking you had to do, just so you know. But I'd like to go to Jack. It's a bit so essentially before the film has started, there's lots of different things going on, but it is, the script is done, what's going on, and yet there's such a fluid process that's going on. Is there a pressure to rewrite? How do you find the writing of as you're going along?
Shane's the writer. So we got the script to the position that Shane was incredibly happy with. And then as it altered, Shane is altering the story in his head. We're never going madly away until that fourth episode. And then that fourth episode, there was this break, and it was like, we need to work this out again. And the fourth episode had been a bugbear all the way through the writing process, because it was Shane meeting someone. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was Shane doing the thing that he wanted to do. And I tell you, when watching that thing, I think, watching that moment between the two of them and watching what Stephen did with Shane's story and watching that forgiveness and thinking about it in relation to like Dead Man's Shoes, which is all about, a violence and do you know what I mean? Like, an
revenge.
Anger. And then this sort of really loving, do you know what I mean? Like, it felt really loving, that moment. Do you know what I mean? Like, full of anger, full of everything else, but just peaceful and loving. And do you know what I mean? Like, it just was the most extraordinary thing. I mean, this whole process was the most extraordinary thing. We were trusted, I've said this before, but we were all trusted with Shane's heart on this project. Do you know what I mean? Like, that this was something which was his battle. Do you know what I mean? Like, and we were all trusted to be part of the telling of that story. And it really was like the greatest responsibility, but the most beautiful responsibility, to be given that chance to tell his story. Do you know what I mean? Like, and so yeah, no, there is a constant evolution, and on the others, there's been times when it's been like, we need to redo this, redo that. That 4 was the only. No, there's been a couple of times where we scrapped the whole episode. But do you know what I mean? Like, just that thing of just like going, okay, this isn't right, and then it still wasn't right, and then it was like, and then as they said, it wasn't right till the day. Do you know what I mean? Like, and that's, amazing, I think.
I am going to go to you quickly, Stephen, before I bring in the audience, who are very kindly given us quite a few questions. But okay, there's two questions I'd like to ask you. One, everybody's been talking about the responsibility and trust that Shane has given them in order to tell the story of what might have been, what Shane could have done, perhaps in his life, confronted somebody that had abused him when he was younger. But the responsibility is really, really on you in order to represent that. How did that weigh on you? How did you find it?
It didn't really weigh on me at all, if I'm honest. Shane's a very, very dear friend, you know what I mean? I love him with all my heart. And throughout the process of filming as well, we became even closer during the Virtues, even closer than what we already have been through circumstances from both our lives, but we became even closer than that. And I spent a lot of time with Shane's dad as well. So I was getting to know about Shane as a child, unbeknownst to Shane, when I was asking Artie in the car. You know what I mean? I was getting all of this lovely, beautiful information about this wonderful little young boy who was just like the light and soul of the party, and who was mystified by the beauty of the world and was so innocent and so lovely and so gorgeous and so loving. And that's what I was feeding from every morning I'd be with Artie in the car. Every lunchtime I'd sit down and have my dinner with Artie. So it wasn't as if I was manipulating the situation, and through that process as well, I became really close with Artie. I don't mean to be a dickhead, and I love him to bits, you know what I mean? And so our relationship developed massively, but I was sucking the fucking marrow on it. Sucking the marrow and the life out of Artie about Shane as a kid, but also me and Shane were having these beautiful conversations on set. We're both men who've gone through a lot of changes, and how we've developed as human beings, and through our own spiritual journey. Do you know what I mean? And I looked Shane in the eyes at one point, and we had these conversations, and it was, because for me the injustice of it, of what happens and stuff like that, and the research I'd done as well through my own stuff, where I'd looked at alcoholics and stuff like that, do you know what I mean, and a program that they work and things, and about forgiveness and about looking at your past. And in order to move on and to grow, we have to cleanse the past. We can't carry that with us in life. Do you know what I mean? We can't keep those resentments and that anger, because that just leads to darkness and pain. And ultimately, for Joseph, in many aspects, that would lead to him relapsing and going back into that horrible place he'd been in for years before we met him in this story. And I did look at Shane, and I kind of asked him, if he was to confront him, what would it be like? How would he feel? And and it's a huge thing, because the man who Shane is, the man who makes us these films that have a heart, that have a soul, that have hope, that have so much passion in them, but ultimately they're kind of someone trapped somewhere and trying to be free. Do you know what I mean? It's that inner soul. And that's what I tried to bring into that without even knowing about it. Do you know what I mean? It's that forgiveness. And like what Jack very nicely said, thank you very much, Jack, for those words. I didn't know what was going to happen in that moment. I didn't even know that he was going to be in a bed. Do you know what I mean? I didn't know. So me as Stephen as well, I had to leave it all outside, because I didn't know. And we did. Nickie was right. We had a stuntman there, because I might have grabbed him around and it might have tried to have it, but it was just that feeling of like, what karma's done for me, what I don't need to do now. And I don't need to taint my soul or my spirit with what I could do to you, with what you've been tainted with what you did to me. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And it ultimately, he even asked him, he gave him the opportunity to give forgiveness for himself. But ultimately, Joseph left that room transformed.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? He cleansed his own soul by forgiving himself, but also forgiving that fella, by realizing it wasn't Joseph's fault. You know what I mean? This was a sick man, but I forgive him.
Yeah.
In order to move forward. Sorry, that was a bit profound, wasn't it? But yeah,
it was good.
Kind of
we like it. In the end, it's more Christian than actually the Catholic Church. So well done.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have here some questions from our fabulous audience. Okay. We have quite a lot, so I'm just going to go through. This is a question for Shane, Helen, and Stephen from Nick Stevens. Thank you, Nick. And it says, do you think the industry is starting to open up to working class actors? oh, we could talk about this for like an hour, but let's not. Let's talk about it for just a little moment. How are we feeling about that?
Helen, you kick off there, dude.
Go ahead, Ellen.
Well, I was just speaking to somebody about this the other day, because I before I lost you earlier, my roots been very unorthodox into this, and I grew up in a small village where we had a parochial hall and a youth club, and there wasn't an outlet for show-offs like me. So I don't. I mean, I did a play at school and I loved it. And I mean, I'm from part of a large family, and the money went to keeping that family going. So there wasn't kind of extra for those extras to travel to places where there were drama. And I'm not, I mean, I've had a very comfortable childhood and life, but there just wasn't that facility here. So I think across the board, a lot of kids, you know, from every background, have missed out because of where they're from, for whatever reason. I do think it's getting slightly better, but honestly, I think if you didn't pick me up out of the gutter in that pub, Shane, I might never be here. I mean, that was an opportunity.
I would just like to, can we just tell that story really quickly of how you two met? Because Shane, I know you were on holiday, weren't you?
Yeah, I went over on holiday with wife and my first son. My second lad wasn't even born yet. We were having I think a week in this beautiful beachside cottage thing in a place called was it Bettystown I was in?
Bettystown, yeah.
And so I saw this pub and go into this local boozer, and lovely pub. Reminded me of a place in Uttoxeter, my favourite pub in Uttoxeter, the Old Talbot. Go there with me dad, and
that's a great pub.
Yeah, Helen come over, and you know, one of them places where you kind of get embraced and you get in with people, and I spoke to this guy called Ez, and he was behind the bar. And I think the South Bank show thing had been replayed, or it had been on recently, whatever had happened. This guy recognised me from that, and was just sort of saying, "Oh, are you the guy from This Is England?" And long story short, he said, "How long are you staying? Because there's a woman coming in, you know, I really think you should meet." Whenever anyone says that to me, I just imagine like you know, Bonnie Langford.
Need to do my ringlets up.
Yeah. So, but anyway, but then everywhere I went in this pub, you know, and I was listening to music or be talking to someone at the bar, everybody mentioned Helen. You know, you got to meet Helen, and I was kind of like, who is this Helen? She came in, and it was a mental night because there was a guy who was
disappointment to you.
There was a guy shoplifting who pinched about 15 ladies' purses in this pub and was hiding them all in the cistern. It was a night for the ages.
It was brilliant.
In amongst all of that, you know, profound stuff happening, and the guy being taken outside and slapped across the arse. Helen finally came in, and I met her at the bar, and I was like, you know, your reputation precedes you, madam. And we had a great chat, and her husband was massive. And I was kind of going, I'm here with my wife, please don't kill me. And she gave me a number, and I said, look, if ever I'm doing anything, and I'll try and think on, I sometimes forget, but you know, I'll put your number in my wallet. And if I've just finished, I think I've just finished This Is England 86. And whatever I'd just done, it was going to be a while before I did anything else. And then long story short, me and Jack were sat down writing, I think This Is England 88, very early stages. So I don't know, maybe a year later, I don't know exactly how long, maybe 18 months. And I said, God, Lol, you know, what about if Lol goes to see a nurse, like a district nurse in this place, you know, to talk about how unwell she's feeling. I said, God, I feel like I know a nurse. It was an actress who is actually a nurse. And Helen had told me, obviously, because she is a nurse, I'd got it the wrong way around. There was a nurse that wanted to be an actress, but that was good enough for me. So I got the team when me and Jack were writing it. They rang Helen and said, you know, so she got a phone call, I think at your mum and dad's, maybe, I don't know where it was.
I was in the kitchen washing my dishes that night. My friend, you're quite right, Ez said, that is Shane Meadows at the bar. This was a tiny little pub. My sister had her wallet robbed. The place had been fleeced. Her parents, I'm going to kick the shit out of this fellow, whatever. And Shane just said, this is great. I feel like I'm at home here and nothing. Bullet holes in the wall from the ship that happened 2 weeks previous. It was a mental night, but I thought from my point, it's such a small village, as I said, and it's a great seaside village, but you know, superstar directors don't often walk in the door of your local. So I saw a chance and I took it. And I think with anybody else, I don't know, it's because of type of person Shane is. We were having a great night, and I just thought, you're never going to be here again. I have to ask that I do that thing you're not supposed to do, gives a job. And I kind of watched you carefully fold my number, and I thought, oh, maybe that means something. And every time the phone rang with a UK number, I'd leap out of my skin, and it was a bloody cold caller. And then eventually, when I got the call, I was washing the dishes in the kitchen, and I was leaping up and down, going, and then coming back to the phone. Yes, that sounds very nice. Totally overjoyed. And I mean, if I know that, and I keep saying this to Shane, you know, if it wasn't for you, and he did say to me, I got you in here, but you have to keep yourself there. But really, I mean, it's you, dude. I appreciate the opportunity, and because of people like Shane, some working class people will have a shot because you're seen and you're heard by people like him. So I think if it's your vision and your dream, there's somebody out there. You know, those Shanes are few and far between, but there are slowly coming more opportunities. But Jesus, that was the turning point in my life, and I'm so glad that you took a chance on me, and I hope it didn't let you down. It's been
You definitely did not. Then I'd just like to say also, Helen, that Matthew Blaney has said, P.S. Helen, thank you for your frontline service. You're a legend. So thank you also, NHS.
You're
just
more
very
than
briefly, Miranda,
Absolutely.
the BAFTA are now running schemes, and I've done some, if you like, some online workshops over lockdown. Nickie, I can't remember the name of the one we did, which was for working class actors. What was that?
Elevate, BAFTA Elevate.
Yeah, and what was the one that I did with you, Nickie, where you...
actors awareness. I think we have some people on here that's from Actors Awareness.
Oh, and so there's things that are springing up all the time. Obviously, you need people who are in mine, Mark's, Nickie's position, Jack's position, Stephen and Helen, who want to promote new talent and underrepresented talent. But I've done some, just by the nature of being in lockdown, I've worked with a few groups, and BAFTA Elevate most recently, and it blew my mind how much talent is out there that's from places that people don't normally associate it coming from, you know, whether it be that they've not had a classical education or from a background that's just severely underrepresented, or they just never get that chance. So things are definitely looking brighter on that front.
So the advice would be join BAFTA Elevate, and if you see someone you like, go up to them and give them a number and say, I want to work. Do that.
And a baby Guinness.
Yeah, that's baby Guinness. Very naughty.
Maybe buy them a drink. I've got a question here for you, Stephen, and there's a quote in it which I'm quite impressed, and it says, this is a review of the virtues, and it led with, no man working in Britain today can drink a pint with more pathos than Stephen Graham. You don't shy away from playing characters going through incredibly intense and difficult periods. What is it that draws you to those sorts of characters?
Well, I'm never going to be Mr. Darcy. Do you know what I mean? So for me, it's just trying to play those parts and be a part of the stories that I used to watch when I was a kid. That made me want to be an actor in the first place, like, you know, Boys from the Black stuff, Alan Clark's things, all of those great dramas that I was brought up on watching on telly. It's wanting to be a part of telling those great stories, and, you know, fortunately enough, kind of the stuff that I choose. Should I say me, or should I say Hannah and Jane? That they choose for me is very kind of, you know, I'm lucky. It's social. It kind of has a message of the stuff that I truly, truly adore doing, and it's kind of political. But for me, it's always been about just trying to play the truths of the story. Do you know what I mean? And the humanity of the character, really. And I find them really interesting to play. Kind of going back to what you were saying, you know, working class and stuff like that. The working class stories need to be told. So we need to find the writers that can tell these stories. And then, you know, with the likes of Jack and Shane and Nickie and Mark can try and help those opportunities, help those people get those opportunities, because primarily it's about the opportunities. But for me, there's so much truth and so much, you know, what I love about Shane as well, and Jack's right, and there's so much humour as well, because we're not all miserable bastards, you know what I mean? We have some great times, man. You want to be in our house on a crimbo, or when I was a kid in my nana's, do you know what I mean? It was just amazing. Getting knocked over by a taxi trying to run across to the van to buy about chewies, do you know what I mean? My life being full of that kind of stuff, making go-karts. I was telling that out for you, it was like on the scooter, I went, we used to make go-karts. It's like, what? Yeah, we made our own go-karts. Wheels and bits of trolleys and bits of wood, you know what I mean? It was amazing. You were out in the fields till 6, 7 o'clock at night, and just, it's that kind of thing. But being a part of telling them stories, them characters to me are fascinating.
That's what it is. So look, we haven't got very much time, annoyingly. So I'm going to ask you all to have a think about this question before I ask another one, which is, I'm going to ask you at the end what your favourite moment was when you're making the programme. But before that, there's a question here from Luke Sedge, who says to Shane, how large, I like the idea of large, how large did your idea have to be in order for you to decide that this is the idea worth using and not to try to think of other ideas? Because I imagine that you've got ideas all the time. How do you know which one to go for?
Yeah, it's a mixture. Sometimes they do kind of pick you, and they just, I mean, for instance, when you get a call from Ian Brown, a direct call from Ian Brown going, the Stone Roses are getting back together. Do you fancy making a documentary about it? You go, right, everything that I was thinking about all now has to leave the building. You know, I rang my wife and said, is it at all humanly possible, even though we have children, that I can go on tour for a little bit and live out my dreams as a 5'1" rock star? And that, so sometimes they just, the moment picks you. And you know, and The Virtues was probably another one like that wasn't anywhere near as joyous a subject, but needed to be made. And then a lot of the other ones, you're right, Miranda, you kind of I've had a number of stories that have been around for a number of years, and then certain things transpire, the universe, the stars align, and projects that wouldn't be funded, suddenly people will look at that subject matter in a different way, or, you know, or an actor that you've wanted becomes about, you know, it's sometimes you can try to get something going. I mean, there's a story about an incredible man I grew up in the town where he lived, called Bartley Gorman, who was a bare knuckle fighter, converted to Catholicism in his later life. This most unbelievable story. And myself and Paddy Considine tried to write a feature film. I've tried to write as a series. I've never quite found the right box to fit it in, but I know one day that's going to happen, because it's kind of one of those stories that's in me that I know I need to kind of tell, and you're waiting for the right moment. And so sometimes you get the odd one like The Roses, where you're like Dick Whittington, just get me some cheese in the knapsack, I'm off. And then there's other ones that, you know, it's just about how the universe works out, how the deck of cards get dealt.
Yeah, I like the cheese in a knapsack and like lots of cameras also.
Yeah.
That tends to be kind of useful. Okay, so we are coming towards the end, but I would like all of you to just have a think. Can you tell me what your favourite moment was when you were making this programme? Because obviously it was an intense experience, but intense experiences are the best, aren't they? So I'm going to ask you, Nickie, first. What was your favourite moment?
It's going to be quite a general one. I'm so sorry, because I know you want specifics, but this is my first job producing for Shane, so it was it's that basically. It's the fact that I actually got to produce The Virtues. I mean, holy shit.
Big tick.
Yeah, it's not going to get better than that. So it's that one.
Okay. What about you, Mark?
I think I was thinking about this when you said, the thing that summed it up the best is that, like I said, you need to trust Shane's instincts. And we were going to do all the past stuff from the care home. And he rang up and said, we need to do it on VHS. It can't be like a plug-in. And it was like, I love eBay, Shane loves eBay. We kind of like thing.
You are my people.
Yeah. I just remember just sort of like going on eBay and finding this amazing VHS camera in Sheffield with no battery. And going to, you know, picking it up, but it didn't have a battery. So we found out we could use these plug-in things for charging a car. that you get from B&Q. So literally coming back from Chesterfield, going down Queen's Road on the way to the school, buying this battery pack that you can plug a camera in, and then just going, there you go. And then about the day after, they're shooting this amazing VHS sequence. So that just kind of summed up the whole process for me. And yeah, so that was probably my bit.
Okay, Helen, what about you?
My answer is a little bit like Nickie's, and I'm a terrible one for talking, so I'll try and keep this short. But to go from being a nurse and getting a chance to suddenly kind of move on to a project like The Virtues, to be given a chance by somebody you so admire and respect, and to be able to flourish within that. So I think down to a moment and a visceral moment, because for me, the most exquisite thing about this project, and I still get messages from people on a daily basis, I should send you a few more, Shane, how people feel about this project. It's his examination of the human condition, pain in particular, which we all experience. I'm going to try not to ramble, but this is really important. I feel like nobody sits with pain as much as Joseph does, as much as Shane does with Joseph, examines that pain. Pain demands to be felt. That's one of my favorite sayings. But watching that as an audience, and it's very difficult when you're in something because you're always kind of looking at yourself. But I finally got to a place where I could watch this for what it is. And it's that examination of the human condition, that looking at pain, sitting with it, contorting with the character, you know, being guilty with them and upset with them, and then finally and ultimately, which is the great message of this program, being hopeful with them, watching them kind of get this catharsis, go through this huge pain, which we all have, you know, or all will have in our lives. That's why people connect to it. That's why it's so important. That's why it's such an amazing program. And to be part of that is my favorite thing. To be part of that, be in that moment with Stephen, knowing that we were creating this history that was visceral and would make people feel, and being aware of it just directly afterwards. Wow, that was a special feeling, that special moment. I mean, I love working, and nothing else will come close to that job. It's been amazing. And from a comedy point of view, Bollock and Stephen and Niamh for smooching on the couch, that was a good moment. And driving home from the pub, I enjoyed that as well. I enjoyed all of it. I mean, it's a happy day at work, it's a sad day, you're crunched up, you're laughing, you're crying. It's a feeling experience, and it's been one of the best of my life. Sorry, that was a long answer.
Very beautiful, though. Thank you, Helen. Okay, Jack.
And just to say, the reason why it's set in Ireland is because of Helen. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, that Shane said right at the beginning that this story, Helen's part of this story, and it needs to be in Ireland. So that's the whole reason why it's there, right, Shane?
Yeah, absolutely. And I spoke to Helen, and obviously, you know, Helen's own family and the stories that we shared within there. You know, it wasn't just because obviously, you know, probably from the basis of what we've all said in this session, it sounds like it's only my on a personal level, my stuff that was in there, but everybody involved in this. And this is, you know, crew and members, cast and members of the crew shared things about themselves that made this, you know, because no one story is ever enough. And you know, there's things that we shared that, you know, bond you together for life. So yeah, that was one of those decisions we made early through some really early conversations with Helen.
Okay, and I'm going to go to Stephen. Can you think of one moment that
You've missed Jack's best bit?
Oh, Jack, God, Jack, give me a moment.
Sorry, no, sorry. I just started talking about Helen instead. So it was
Hey, Jack.
it was that first meeting, and it was the most extraordinary meeting of my life. There was some illness stuff going on, there was all sorts of stuff going on, and then Shane told me what had happened to him and said, I think that we need to make this into a story, and that was you know, I'll never have anything like that happen to me again.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I am going to go to Stephen now, and then Shane, you have to give us one too. Stephen.
It's far too hard.
Sorry, it's like a test.
I can double bluff you. Well, I'm not even bluffing. I can just say, and I can get away with this because this is my truth, so I don't really care. I'm a great believer in living in the moment. And I loved every moment of that because I lived throughout that experience. And I gained so much knowledge about myself, about the beautiful people around me, about myself as an actor, and just about life. So the whole process to me was a beautiful experience. Do you know what I mean? And like they've said, every single one of us. I mean, look at Nickie. Nickie went from being our first AD to producing.
Yeah.
This, you know what I mean? That in itself is fucking massive. That's more than just a one moment. That's massive. And now she's flying. You know what I mean? It was the whole thing, the collection of everything. So I can say moments are specific, but I believe in living in the moment. So the whole thing, I lived the whole thing. So I got away with that for everything.
You have got away with it. Shane, give me a moment. A moment. One moment.
So, God, one moment. Flipping out. That's the part that I enjoyed the most, that was most special to me, is the bit I love on everything that I do, which is where I've just finished writing with Jack. I've just sort of got Mark and Nickie to find us a home for the actors, and I sit in the rooms with the actors for the first time. Those first rehearsals are just I live for that. I honestly, if you took the earth away, and I could just have a room with one of them little tables and chairs you get in an Alan Bennett play, I could survive very happily. That obviously meeting and having PJ Harvey agree to music, Jack being, helping me to believe that there was a story there. It's really hard on a job like this, but in terms of asking me to pick one thing besides the fact that it was this really small cast and crew, so there was no them and us, it was just us. It was, for me, it's that bit where I'm running out of the rehearsal rooms to go and talk to Mark and Nickie, or costume or locations, and going, shit, forget that, Jack, what do you think of this? Where suddenly everyone gets plugged in, and what they found, that home, that crazy little school that cost less than renting a little tiny room, student room. We've managed to get the entire Skywalker Ranch. So yeah, I'm sorry we've all been expansive in that bit. But yeah.
It's because none of you like to talk, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, look, I would like to say thank you so much for joining us. It's been really absolutely brilliant to talk to you. It's a completely special piece of work that is, as we've all learned, special to all of you, but also special to anybody who's watched it. It's a very moving piece of work. So I'd like to say thank you so much for joining us, and congratulations on your nomination.
Thank you, Miranda. Thank
you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
I'd just like to say that also, if anybody has been feeling upset by any of the stuff that we've been talking about, if you go to the chat here, there's a resource list from Channel 4 to help support survivors of abuse. And also for those working in the industry, every year the film and TV charity team at BAFTA helps thousands of people to overcome personal and professional obstacles. So if this session has brought up anything for you and you want to talk to somebody, there's a support line on there. So I'd like to say thank you again to all of you. Thank you to our supporting partner of the sessions, TCL. Thank you for being here, audience. We hope you enjoyed it. There's more sessions coming up from BAFTA, which include the making of Top Boy tomorrow, which I imagine is going to be amazing, and the making of the end of the effing world, also brilliant. We really hope that you've enjoyed this discussion. Please join the conversation on BAFTA's social channels and stay tuned for details on where to watch both the British Academy Television Craft Awards and the Virgin Media British Academy Television Awards, and see if this lot win. All right. So thank you so much, everybody. Love to you all.
Thanks,
stay in the moment. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thanks so much, Miranda. Thank you.
See you later.
Bye.
Right, is that? And then what do we do? Oh.
And then what do I do? There's mine.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.